The morning light filtered gently through the lace curtains of their canal-side flat in Jordan. It was a Saturday like any other in Amsterdam. Hannah Van Dyke, a 34-year-old social worker, stood at the kitchen counter, preparing breakfast for her 6-year-old son, Noah. She poured fresh orange juice into a glass as the smell of buttered toast and eggs warmed the air. Noah sat at the table humming softly, swinging his legs as he scribbled in his sketchbook. Since moving into this quiet neighborhood after her divorce, Hannah had done everything to build a stable life for Noah. The chaos of her ex-husband's gambling habits was now a distant memory. In its place, there was calm, routine, safety. Noah thrived in it. He attended a nearby international primary school, rode his little red bike like a local, and spent afternoons feeding ducks at Vondelpark. That Saturday, they had plans to visit the Rijksmuseum. Noah had developed a fascination with Rembrandt, especially the Night Watch. He would point at the canvas with bright eyes, telling anyone nearby, "That one's protecting the city." After breakfast, they bundled up and made their way through the winding cobbled streets. The air was crisp with early spring, tulips blooming in flower boxes. Hannah's phone buzzed with a message from her friend and neighbor, Marietje. She would meet them at the museum with her teenage son, Sven. Marietje had been a steady presence since Hannah moved into the building. A school counselor with a warm smile and a quiet strength, she helped Hannah navigate school policies, language barriers, and occasional parenting doubts. Sven, though quiet and often glued to his phone, was polite and had always been gentle with Noah. At the museum entrance, Marietje waved them over. Noah ran ahead, squealing with excitement. Inside, as they moved through the halls of art, Hannah watched Sven from a distance. He kept his head down, barely looking up from his mobile. Still, when Noah reached for his hand, he took it without hesitation. They lingered at the Night Watch. Noah's small voice filled the silence. "Mama, who protects us now?" Hannah smiled. "I do, darling." But as she said the words, something deep in her stirred. A flicker of unease. Nothing more than a breath. And yet it lingered. That night, after tucking Noah into bed, she stepped onto the balcony and lit a cigarette. The lights from the canal boats shimmered across the water. All seemed well. But she could not shake the image of Sven's face, pale, withdrawn, and cold behind the glass of his phone screen. Just as she turned to go back inside, she heard a small voice calling out from Noah's room. "Mama, Sven scares me sometimes." She froze. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" But there was no answer. Just the sound of soft breathing, already deep in sleep, and the distant hum of a city that never truly slept. The following week unfolded like most others. The streets of Amsterdam bustled with bikes, trams, and chatter in a dozen languages. At school, Noah returned to his usual rhythm, coloring dragons, singing Dutch nursery rhymes, and racing through the corridors during lunch. But something had changed. Hannah could see it in his eyes. Noah had always been a lively boy, curious and affectionate. But lately, there was a quietness to him, as if he were watching the world from behind a pane of glass. He still played with his friends, still smiled when she tucked him in, but his drawings told a different story. Gone were the windmills and smiling animals. Now there were dark tunnels, figures with missing faces, and tiny stickmen locked in cages. Hannah's concern grew when his teacher, Jeff Marit, called her in after class one afternoon. "He's distracted," she said gently, folding her hands on her desk. "He doesn't want to join group activities, and when I asked him why, he said, they don't see the monster." Hannah's heart clenched. "Monster," she echoed. Jeff Marit nodded, frowning. "It might just be his imagination, but I thought you should know." That evening, over dinner, Hannah brought it up casually. "Did something happen at school today?" Noah shook his head. "Just boring stuff." "Are you having bad dreams again?" He shrugged. She leaned in, her voice calm. "Noah, remember what we talked about. If something's bothering you, you can tell me. I'm always here." There was a long pause. Then, he whispered, "I saw Sven on your computer." Hannah blinked. "What do you mean?" "I woke up. You were in the kitchen. He was in the screen." She frowned. "Did you dream that?" He looked away. That night, When Noah had gone to bed, Hannah sat at her desk and checked her laptop. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But then she remembered. Last weekend, she'd left a video call open with Marij. Maybe Sven had wandered into view. It made sense, yet something didn't sit right. Curiosity led her to glance through her browsing history. She hadn't expected much, but one link caught her eye. A page she didn't recall visiting. A dark forum with a Dutch name, Spiegelkinderen or Mirror Children. She clicked. The screen filled with threads about lost identities, shadow selves, and strange reflections. One post, dated just 3 days ago, chilled her. They watch through mirrors. They learn. They wait. And then they step through. The user's name was a string of numbers. But the profile picture, it looked like the corner of Noah's bedroom. She slammed the laptop shut. 2 days later, during a playdate at the park, Noah refused to go near the climbing frame when Sven approached. He hid behind his mother's leg, his voice trembling. "He's not Sven." "What do you mean?" Hannah asked, forcing a smile. Noah clutched her hand tightly. "He's wrong. He smells like metal. He blinks too slow. And his eyes are like glass." Later that evening, Hannah stood on her balcony once more, the wind cold against her skin. She stared at Marij's window across the courtyard. The light was on. A silhouette moved behind the curtains. For a moment, it looked like Sven, but the shadow turned its head too slowly and smiled without moving its mouth. The next morning, Hannah could barely look away from Sven as she helped Noah into his coat. Marij stood in the hallway, chatting casually, completely unaware of the storm gathering behind Hannah's calm nods and polite smiles. Sven stood beside his mother, clutching a small toy robot, his eyes fixed on Noah. They didn't blink. Not once. That afternoon, Hannah made a decision. She arranged to work remotely for a few days, wanting to keep Noah close. Every glance, every sound in the flat, she paid attention to. Noah, for his part, seemed relieved. He no longer asked to go outside. He avoided mirrors. And whenever Sven's name was mentioned, he whispered the same thing. "He's not gone back yet." One rainy evening, after Noah had fallen asleep beside her on the sofa, Hannah stepped into the hallway and gently knocked on Marij's door. It took longer than usual for her neighbor to answer. When she did, Marij looked pale, tired, and distant. "Hey," Hannah began, trying to keep her voice light. "Sorry to drop in so late. Just wondering how Sven's been? Noah's been saying some odd things. Maybe they had a fight." Marij hesitated, her eyes flicking back inside. "He's not quite himself lately. But you know kids, they go through phases. He just stays in his room most days. Says he's tired. Mind if I say hi?" There was a flicker of something in Marij's expression. Fear? "He's asleep." Hannah smiled tight. "Of course. Another time." Back home, she tried to push away the gnawing sense of wrongness. But at 2 a.m, a strange noise jolted her upright. Knocking. From under the floor. She held her breath. It came again. Faint. Hollow. Rhythmic. Knock. 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 Terrified but driven by instinct, she crept to the living room, pressed her ear to the old wooden floorboards, and listened. There it was again. A voice. Muffled. Frantic. Mama? Her heart pounded. She ran to fetch a screwdriver and quietly began to unscrew the corner of the floorboard near the radiator, where the sound was loudest. The wood creaked as she lifted it. And there, barely visible in the dark crawlspace beneath the flat, was a pale face. Dirt-smudged, eyes wild. Tears streaked down his cheeks. It was Sven. The real Sven. She clamped a hand over her mouth. Above them, in the hallway, small feet padded softly across the floor. Noah stirred. Then from the open door of his bedroom, a voice called out in a slow, unnatural cadence. "Mama." "Where are you?" It was Sven's voice. But not from beneath the floor. From the thing that had taken his place. Hannah froze. The voice from Noah's room was soft, curious, childlike, but not quite right. There was an unnatural weight to it, as though someone was learning how to speak again. Slowly, deliberately. She turned away from the exposed floorboard, replacing it just enough to muffle the whimpers of the real Sven below. Her hands trembled as she tiptoed down the hallway, each step slow and silent. Noah's door was ajar, the room bathed in the cool blue glow of his nightlight. The thing inside was standing at the foot of the bed, back turned, staring at the wall. Sven. Hannah whispered. The figure turned around slowly. It looked just like Sven. Same blonde curls, same oversized pajamas. But the eyes were wrong. Too wide. Too still. And the smile, it stretched too far, unnaturally calm, as though stitched into place. I was looking for you, it said.
Hannah didn't respond.
She reached slowly behind her and clicked Noah's door shut. I think it's time for bed, she said, her voice measured. The thing tilted its head. I'm not tired. Noah is.
A pause.
Can I sleep here tonight? It asked. Its voice was syrupy now, imitating innocence with unsettling precision. Hannah shook her head.
No.
Your mom is waiting for you. The smile faded for just a moment, and something shimmered in its eyes. Something ancient. Something cold. Then, without another word, the creature padded past her, down the hallway, and slipped silently into Marige's flat. Hannah bolted Noah's door. Once Noah was safely asleep, she returned to the living room, heart racing, and unscrewed the floorboard again. The boy beneath looked up with a quiet desperation. Please, Sven whispered. He came when I was asleep. He looks like me.
Sounds like me.
But he's not me. Hannah's voice caught. How long? 3 nights. He keeps saying I belong in the dark now. That he's better at being me. Why didn't your mom notice? She thinks I'm having mood swings. He's tricking her. He knows everything. My voice. My words. He took my place. Tears stung Hannah's eyes. We'll get you out. But she couldn't act that night. Not with the creature still awake. She closed the floor again, more gently this time. The next morning, she rang Marige's bell, feigning cheer. Coffee? I thought we could chat while the boys play. Marige, bleary-eyed, invited her in. Sven, no. The thing pretending to be him, sat on the rug, assembling Lego bricks in perfect silence. When it looked up, it smiled again. Good morning, Mrs. Hannah, it said sweetly. A chill swept down her spine. She sat across from Marige as their mugs steamed between them. How's Sven? She asked casually. Marige sighed. Still quiet. Still not himself.
But he's calm now, at least.
And he eats. She looked over fondly. It's just one of those growing phases, I suppose. The creature met Hannah's eyes from across the room. Its smile widened, and it mouthed something. I know. The canals of Amsterdam had always lulled Hannah to peace. Their slow, murmuring current, the way light shimmered on the surface, the occasional swan drifting past. But today they felt different, too still, too quiet, like they were watching. She stood on the bridge near Brouwersgracht, Noah in his stroller, napping soundly beneath a blanket. Across the water, she saw Marige walking with him, the fake Sven, who skipped ahead in a jerky, disjointed rhythm. It didn't blink. It never blinked. As Marige waved and crossed to the other side, Hannah forced a smile, but her gaze was fixed on the child. The creature tilted its head, as if hearing something only it could understand. Then it turned to the water, whispered to it. That was the first time Hannah saw the ripples, tiny movements in the canal, as though something had stirred beneath the surface. The fake Sven stood at the edge, murmuring to the water in a tongue Hannah couldn't place. His hand hovered over the surface, but never touched it. Then he stopped, turned, and stared directly at her. Not at Hannah's face, but straight into her soul. That night, she dreamed of water. Endless, black water. And in it, eyes, thousands of them. Watching. Waiting. Some of them were human. Some were not. When she woke, her pillow was damp. She tried to shake it off, but the dreams came again. Each night, deeper. Louder. The whispers more insistent. And always, the same voice, Sven's voice, but twisted. You let me in. Now I never have to leave. Determined to end it, Hannah returned to the hidden cellar beneath the floor. Sven was still there, his face pale, lips cracked. He had stopped crying days ago. "There's something in the water," she whispered. "He talks to it." Sven nodded slowly. "That's where he came from." "What is he?" Sven didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, "We were playing by the canal. I saw a hand in the water. It waved. I waved back." A shiver ran through Hannah. "He climbed out that night. He touched my face and smiled. Then, I was here.
Trapped.
Cold. Why can't he hurt you?" "I don't know," Sven whispered. "Maybe because I'm not fully gone. Maybe because I'm still real."
Hannah knew then.
The creature couldn't take full control while the original Sven still existed. It needed to keep him alive, but hidden. It was pretending perfectly until it no longer needed to pretend. Until someone invited it in fully. She had to act. But not alone. The next morning, she met Peter, her upstairs neighbor. He was old Amsterdam, sharp-witted and deeply rooted in local superstition. "You believe me?" she asked, voice trembling. He lit his pipe, eyes never leaving hers. "My grandmother spoke of the verdronking, the drowned ones. Spirits that never moved on. They wait, mimic, they're jealous of the living." "Can we stop it?" Peter tapped his pipe on the windowsill. "We don't stop them. We return them." "Return them where?" His eyes narrowed. "To the water." The mist that rolled in over Amsterdam the next morning was heavier than usual, clinging to the canals like a second skin. Hannah stepped out of her building, clutching Noah close to her chest. She had not slept. How could she, knowing what she now knew? Peter was waiting at the bridge, a small leather pouch in his hand. He had scrawled chalk runes across the planks of the bridge and lit a single beeswax candle that flickered violently in the windless air. "What is all this?" she whispered. He didn't look at her. "Old protection. It might not stop him, but it'll give us time." She glanced at the canal. It was moving again, not with wind or current, but with something deeper. Like it breathed. The fake Sven arrived with Marij minutes later. He skipped toward them with delight, but the moment he stepped onto the bridge, he froze. His eyes darkened. "I don't want to go this way," he said. "You're fine, Leifch," Marij replied. "Let's go say hello."
"No," the boy said.
But his voice wasn't Sven's. It was older, echoed, like it came from beneath water. Hannah stepped forward, heart pounding. "You're not Sven." The child turned toward her slowly. His lips curled into a smile, too wide, too knowing. "I was Sven once," he said. "Then I was no one. Now I can be anyone." Behind her, Peter began to chant. The fake child screamed, high, feral, unnatural. The canal surged. Water sloshed over the edge, licking the cobblestones. Something beneath it rose, pushing at the surface, as if it might break through. "You shouldn't have brought him here," the boy snarled, voice inhuman. But Peter continued, louder now. The runes on the bridge glowed faintly. The boy dropped to his knees, clawing at his own throat. "You cannot make me go back." He let me in. Hannah reached for him, but not out of pity. She grasped the necklace he wore, the one Marij had said was a gift from a local artisan. It wasn't. She felt the coldness in it. It pulsed like a second heart. The moment her fingers closed around it, the boy howled, and the canal erupted. A column of water rose from the canal, twisting like a serpent. Eyes blinked within it. Mouths whispered. The fake Sven's body arched unnaturally and then snapped. He fell limp to the ground, body soaked but still breathing. Peter seized the necklace and threw it into the canal. The moment it touched the water, the column collapsed, sending a wave crashing over the pavement. And then all was still. They found the real Sven hours later, curled in Hannah's cellar, blinking into the light.
He had not aged, not changed.
Marij wept uncontrollably when she saw him. "My baby," she whispered, holding him like he might vanish again. But Hannah couldn't feel relief. Not yet. Because the canal still whispered. That night, she dreamed again. This time, Noah was at the water's edge, laughing, waving. And something waved back. The next morning, the air in Amsterdam was still.
Too still.
Hannah noticed at the moment she stepped outside. No birdsong. No passing cyclists. Even the canal boats sat idle, their moorings creaking faintly like groaning bones. The city felt held, as if it were waiting. Peter met her near de Magierbrug, the skinny bridge, his expression grim. Noah was with her, sleeping softly in a sling across her chest. Sven was safe at home, but Hannah could not risk leaving her own son, not with what she had felt in that dream. "He's not gone," Peter said flatly. "What you saw was only a fragment, a shadow wearing skin."
Hannah nodded, jaw tight.
"Then what do we do?" Peter opened a weathered book, its pages smelling of mildew and smoke. "There's one way, but it's dangerous. You've seen it, it lives beneath. The spirit of the drowned. He's been here since before the city had bricks." As he spoke, the water beneath the bridge rippled. "Just once. He collects souls," Peter whispered. "Children. Those unloved, unwanted, or forgotten. But sometimes he takes more." Hannah remembered the faces in the water, the whispers, and the necklace. "Who made that necklace?" she asked. Peter looked pained. "A woman who once tried to strike a bargain. She lost her son. In return, she was promised her heart's desire. And what did she get? A reflection," he said softly, "but never the real thing." Suddenly, the water beneath them rose into a small whirlpool, and a voice came, not from the surface, but from within their minds. "Bring me what I was promised." Hannah's blood ran cold. She clutched Noah tighter. "I never promised you anything," she said aloud. The water chuckled. It was an awful sound, like drowning screams behind laughter. "But he did," it whispered. "You're Peter. Long ago." Hannah turned sharply. "What does he mean?" Peter paled. "I was desperate. My sister's son disappeared one summer. I tried to bargain. I didn't know what I was dealing with. The whirlpool grew. He swore an offering. A child of his own blood." "I'm not your blood," Hannah hissed. "No," Peter said, barely able to meet her eyes. "But Noah is." Silence. Hannah stepped back, clutching her son. "What are you saying?" Peter's face crumbled. "You were my niece's daughter. Your mother never told you. She didn't want you tied to this. But when I saw what was happening to you and Noah, when I saw the pattern repeating, I thought I could undo it, that I could end it for good." Hannah's world spun. The bridge, the water, her uncle, and the thing beneath the canal, still watching. "You gave him my son," she whispered. "I gave him hope," Peter said. "But he took it as an oath." The water roared. "You will honor the debt," the voice bellowed, "or another will be taken." Hannah turned to run. But the bridge trembled. The water rose again. This time, not in a column, but in the shape of a boy. Not Sven. A different child. Drenched. Gray-skinned. Hollow-eyed. He reached for Noah. But Hannah screamed, "You cannot have him." She tore off her coat and threw it at the child shape, which evaporated like mist. Then she ran, clutching Noah, across the bridge and into the streets. Behind her, the canal boiled. Hannah did not stop running until she reached Peter's flat. She slammed the door behind her, bolting it shut, her breath coming in shallow bursts. Noah whimpered softly in his sling, but she held him tight, rocking him, whispering apologies through trembling lips. She didn't trust Peter anymore. Not completely. But he was the only one who knew how deep this curse went. And she needed answers. Real ones. Not half-truths veiled in guilt. While Noah slept in the crib, Hannah tore through Peter's study. Bookshelves packed with journals, old letters, folklore compendiums. Drawers filled with loose maps of old Amsterdam, dates scribbled in fading ink. She found it in a black file, tucked beneath a stack of notes labeled Verloren Kinderen, Lost Children. A newspaper clipping from 1967. Headline: Boy disappears near canal during Festival of Lights. The photo showed a woman with hollow eyes and a smile stretched thin. The boy's name was Thomas. He looked just like Sven. There were more. Articles spanning decades. 1932, 1954, 1981. Always boys. Always 5 or 6 years old. Always during a seasonal shift, solstice or equinox. And then she saw it. A birth certificate. Her mother's.
And a second one.
Hers. Under the father's name. Peter Van Dyke. She stumbled back, heart pounding in her ears. All those years of thinking her mother was alone. That she had no other family. Peter had lied. Not only was he her grandfather, he had made the original bargain. The next page was worse. It was handwritten, notes in the margins, and at the top, rite of appeasement, binding the spirit of water. She scanned the text. One must return the soul taken, or replace it with blood of equal value. But if one dares to sever the oath, the spirit claims double. Her eyes caught a final scrawled warning. Never lie to the drowned. They remember. She turned as she heard the door open. Peter stood in the threshold, soaked from the rain. His face was drawn, gray, like he hadn't slept in days. I didn't know how to tell you, he began. You let it take them, Hannah said, voice like a blade. Your nephew. Maybe more. He walked slowly inside. I thought if I could end it, if I offered something stronger, it would let them go. You offered my son. No, he said. I offered myself. The blood of my blood. I never meant for Noah to be touched. But I was too late. The spirit had already seen him. Hannah looked at the notes again. Then you know how to bind it.
Peter hesitated. Yes.
But it's not easy. And it's not safe. Nothing about this has been safe, Hannah snapped. What do I need to do? Peter reached into his coat and pulled out a small jar. Inside was water, dark, swirling, impossibly deep. It's from the center of the oldest canal. Collected the night your mother was born. He handed it to her. Tomorrow night is the equinox. If you bring this to the spirit's altar at the old tunnel beneath the museum and speak the oath in blood, you may be able to end this. Hannah gripped the jar tightly. And what happens to you? Peter gave her a sad smile. I'm already claimed. Before she could protest, the window behind them cracked. A low hum filled the room, as if the water outside was alive. You have one night, Peter said. Use it well. The night of the equinox fell heavy over Amsterdam. A cold mist rolled in from the canals, turning the cobblestone streets slick and silver under the pale moonlight. Hannah moved quickly. Noah strapped to her chest, his small body pressed tightly to hers. She wore the thick coat Peter had given her, with a jar of dark water hidden in its inner pocket and the handwritten oath folded and pinned to her sleeve. She crossed the Jordan district, passing shuttered cafes and silent bicycles, until she reached the museum quarter. Beneath the grand entrance of the Rijksmuseum, just behind a rusted gate, lay a forgotten stone stairwell. It descended into the earth, beneath the city's skin. She hesitated only for a moment before descending. Each step was slick with age and damp with rot. The air was thick, pungent with algae and old secrets. Her phone had no signal, but she lit the path with a weak torch. The tunnel yawned before her, a ribbed cavern of brick and moss, stretching endlessly into darkness. This was the place Peter had described. The altar was said to lie just beyond the old reservoir gates. As she moved deeper, water trickled along the walls. The sound of dripping echoed around her, rhythmic, almost like breathing. Noah stirred, then let out a soft cry. We're almost there, she whispered. At the end of the passage, she reached it, a chamber carved in ancient stone, covered in old Dutch inscriptions. In the center, a stone pedestal rose like a coffin from the floor. Moss clung to its base, and behind it, a narrow canal tunnel disappeared into shadow. This was the altar. She placed the jar on the pedestal. Her hands trembled. She unfolded the parchment, reading Peter's translated script again and again. Then a voice. You came alone. The sound was like wind on water, but it was unmistakably human. A figure emerged from the darkness. Female.
Pale.
Dripping with water that didn't seem to fall from anywhere. Her hair hung in wet strands, her eyes black as the canal depths. She was the spirit.
Hannah did not speak. She stood her ground.
The spirit circled the pedestal slowly, her gaze fixed on the baby. "You bring me what is mine," she said. "No," Hannah replied. "You took my brother. My mother. You don't get to take him too." The spirit tilted her head. An oath was made. Blood for peace. "I kept the city safe. Until you severed the line. I will offer you something else." The spirit laughed. The sound echoed like water bursting through a pipe. "You offer what you cannot replace?" "I offer myself," Hannah said, stepping forward. "My life. My blood. Let him go." There was silence. Then, the spirit approached, water sloshing around her bare feet though the floor was dry. "Blood willingly given is powerful," she whispered. "But it must be bound." Hannah opened the jar. The dark water shimmered like oil. She dipped her finger into it, then pressed it to her lips, reciting the oath. Water remembers the vow of blood. What was broken, now is mended. What was taken, now returns. Bind me, in place of the stolen. A sudden wind rushed through the chamber, extinguishing her torch. Then light returned. But the spirit had changed. Her face was younger now. Familiar. It was Lincha, Sven's mother. Or rather, what she had become after her grief twisted into rage and ritual. "You carry the guilt of your bloodline," she said softly. "It will always haunt you." "Then let me carry it," Hannah said. The spirit stepped back, fading into the shadows. The water in the canal behind the altar began to churn. Slowly at first, then violently. And from its depths came a voice. "Mama?" It was Sven, soaked but alive, crawling onto the stone floor, eyes wide with confusion and light. Hannah fell to her knees, tears streaking her face. She held out her arms as Sven collapsed into them. Noah stirred awake and smiled. But the peace was brief. Behind her, she heard a final whisper. "One still remains. One debt unpaid." The chamber fell silent, and the altar cracked. The light in the underground chamber flickered like a dying flame. Cracks spidered across the altar stone, glowing faintly with a cold, bluish light. Hannah clutched both boys close, Sven trembling and cold in her arms, Noah wide-eyed but quiet, sensing something beyond his infant understanding. She backed away from the crumbling pedestal, her breath visible in the suddenly freezing air. The whispers still echoed in her head. "One still remains. One debt unpaid." Behind her, the tunnel began to change. Where once there were bricks and moss, now there were roots, writhing and pulsing with life. The ground beneath her feet softened, like soil freshly turned. From the walls, ghostly figures began to form, shapes of the past, eyes hollow, mouths locked in a scream that never reached sound. These were the other offerings. Sven looked up at her. "I saw them," he whispered. "Down there. With me." "How did you get out?" she asked gently. "I didn't," he said. A silence thicker than the mist settled. Then something moved behind the altar. Not the spirit, not a ghost, but something older, larger. It emerged slowly, its form shifting like ink underwater. It had no face, no limbs, only a presence, massive, heavy and ancient. It pulsed with the rhythm of the canal, and it watched her, the source of the pact, the city's true guardian, or jailer. She suddenly understood. Linja had been its voice, its emissary. But this thing had always been the one behind the oath, a protector that demanded sacrifice. "You are the last," it said, though it had no mouth. Its voice rang in her bones. "No," Hannah said. "I've given enough."
"You gave blood," it replied.
"But not yours." She stepped in front of the boys. "Then take me. Leave them." But the creature did not move. It only hummed. Then, unexpectedly, it shifted again. The roots receded. The air warmed. It was not coming for her. It was waiting for a choice. And that choice did not belong to her. Sven stepped forward. "No," Hannah said, grabbing his hand. He looked up at her, something resolute in his gaze that no child should carry. "I think I was meant to stay, he whispered. I felt it. Down there. I wasn't scared. It felt like home. Tears welled in Hannah's eyes. You are not staying. You are a boy. You are my boy. But he looked back at the figure in the dark and nodded slowly. The chamber pulsed again. Sven turned to her, wrapped his arms tightly around her waist. Thank you, he whispered, for coming back. He kissed Noah on the forehead. Then, before she could stop him, he stepped past her, into the light of the altar. There was no scream, no struggle. The figure simply took him. And then it was gone. The cracks in the altar sealed. The cold air lifted. The ghostly roots vanished. Only silence remained. Hannah fell to her knees, numb. Noah let out a soft cry, and she held him close, burying her face in his hair. Above them, the sound of trickling water echoed gently. Peaceful, almost like rain on glass. She stayed there until dawn. When she finally climbed back into the city, the streets of Amsterdam were still,
Calm.
as if nothing had happened. But she knew. Something had changed. Sven had bought them that peace. And the canals would remember. Always.